The following news flash is brought to you by the Lone Star Lowdown, providing your daily bulletins for the commodities market. Today in history, news updates, and the inside scoop into the tides of the alternative. Markets for Wednesday, March 23rd, 2016 are currently trading with gold at $1,223.93 an ounce, silver $15.28 an ounce, Texas crude $41.45 a barrel, and Bitcoin is currently sitting at about 417 U.S. currency. Today in history, the year 1775, Patrick Henry proclaims, "Give me liberty or give me death," in a speech in favor of Virginian troops joining the U.S. Revolutionary War. The infamous slogan of American rebels, "Give me liberty or give me death," was first said today in history. In recent news, an independent panel investigating the Flint water crisis blamed Governor Rick Snyder's office directly, concluding that incompetent state employees in charge of supervising water quality, including state-appointed emergency managers, ignored a list of growing problems with the city water supply and negligently ignored signs of lead contamination. The 116-page report had blame for every level of government, from local Flint officials to the Federal Environmental Protection Agency, but blamed the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, the state agency responsible for monitoring Flint's water supply, as primarily responsible for the water contamination in Flint. The report said that the Flint water crisis is a story of government failure, intransigence, unpreparedness, delay, inaction, and environmental injustice. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said today that Belgian law enforcement and anti-terror departments ignored warnings last June that one of the brothers suspected of blowing himself up in the terror attacks there on Tuesday was a terrorist. Ibrahim El-Bakraoui, suspected of being the bomber who blew himself up at the Zaventem airport, killing at least 11, was stopped crossing into Turkey from Syria 9 months ago, when Turkish officials said that they apparently told anti-terror agencies in Brussels of his involvement with ISIS, the group who claimed responsibility in Tuesday's attacks. A Turkish official stated Dutch authorities allowed Bakraoui to go free because they were unable to establish any ties to terrorism or ISIS. The Israeli newspaper Haaretz reported today that Belgian security service, as well as other Western intelligence agencies, had advanced and precise intelligence of the pending terror attacks prior to them. The newspaper said government agencies had specific warning that the attacks were coming soon and would take place at the airport and in the subway system, though it is not clear how exactly said agencies were warned of the attacks in advance. This was Rick Brody with your lowdown for March 23rd, 2016.
My remedy today came in a box just like they say. I accepted it for value right away, if not sooner, not later.
Okay, we are back. Randy Kelton, Rule of Law Radio, and we're talking to our special guest, Mr. Ron Avery, about his suit against Hearst Communications. And I'm looking at your talking points here, and one word or two words jumped right out at me. Weaponized media. Will you explain what you mean by weaponized media?
Yeah, sure. I think that, media in the first place, its purpose was to report on news, report facts about everyday occurrences, things that are going on. And, the better ones were the ones that could do the best job of reporting that news accurately and completely and understandably. But when the media gets bought up by either a few individuals or a lot of individuals with all the same goals, it can shift the purpose of the media, can shift from reporting news to creating reality, to creating the truth, creating or what I'd like to call hardening a myth. They could create a myth and harden it into reality. And this is weaponized media. This is when the media is turned into a tool to be used against the people, to control them, actually to control their government, even to essentially overthrow their government. And I've been looking at the different tools that tyrants could use, and have found that media is the strongest and most powerful tool they have at their disposal. Because every other tool they have, whether it be taking over the Pentagon or the military or black operations and controlling the three branches of government, or passing laws and unlawful taxes, and infiltrating the bureaucracy, and you name it, law enforcement into one unit, creating the police state. It's all done. The most strongest weapon at their disposal to effectuate this is the media. If they don't have all the media and they can't control the opinion and mind and myth that the people live in, then they can't, none of this other stuff they have can be effective. So it's the media that is the strongest tool that is presently being used against the people of America. And unless people wake up to that and realize that this media is being used against them, then they'll never be able to get out from under oppression.
Yes, and you and I grew up being told about the communist Red Horde, who wanted nothing more than to completely destroy our entire way of life. And then we catch this spy, this guy Anderson, and we find out that for the last 20 years, the Russians had all our launch codes. So they could shut the missiles off in the silos. They could have launched on us at any time they wanted to with impunity.
Yeah, wow.
But they never wanted to because they needed us. Because they were telling their people about these capitalist thieves that want to steal everything we got.
Yeah, they were using the other story, I guess.
Yeah, and I've said for a long time.
The creation of enemies, false enemies.
Exactly. Then you don't pay attention to what's going on. And a politician who is stealing from the public doesn't want anybody looking at him. So he gives them something else to look at. Yeah,
that's an old tactic that's mentioned even in the Federalist letters that at the foundation of our country, they were arguing about things at the Constitutional Convention. And one of the founders said, well, that one of the oldest tricks in the book is to start a foreign war and get all the young people involved and create an enemy. And then when the people become restless for liberty and freedom and concerned about corruption at home, they have a foreign war and all the babies and young ones are over there getting killed and everything. And nobody wants to hear about any of that local stuff anymore because they're, the kids and the husbands are dying and sacrificing, and that puts an end to all that quibbling around at home,
And one of the things I see as a mitigating force is the internet. And there is something so satisfying about the fact that the internet, the seed for the internet, was planted by the Pentagon.
Really?
That is perfect.
Yeah.
The Pentagon had a lot of universities and contractors doing research, and they found that they had multiple universities doing redundant research. So they said, we got to fix this. And they asked their programmers, can you rig a way so that these people can all communicate with one another so we don't wind up spending money on the same thing twice?
Right.
So they put together they leased these 800 trunk lines, and one to this university and one to this government contractors, and this really worked well. So the government contractor said, well, I'm working with this university over here. We'll just win a line from us to that university. So we did trunk lines, and these trunk lines started spreading out like a spider web. And the Pentagon came in and said, hey, hold on, guys. You got to cut that out. So we're losing control of this. And the contractor said, heck with you. I rented those lines. They're mine. And the Pentagon told them, well, if you don't cut that out, we'll pull our hub. And they said, go ahead. We don't care. We'll just route around it.
There you go.
That's
Randy, we got to go off the cliff or anything?
No, we got about 5 minutes.
Okay. Let me come back one little step here before we go too far there, is that I also wanted to mention that what the apparent goal of this weaponized media really is. Because they exemplify a goal. There's a pattern to what they're doing, and what their narrative and mass media message is. Because they're in lockstep. It's not like CNN is reporting one kind of news and ABC another kind and NBC another kind and Fox another kind. They're all pretty much reporting the same stuff. And likewise with the newspapers, like in the big Hearst communications thing. And it has to do with where they want to move society, what they want society to be thinking about. And the reason we know that there's a narrative rather than just clean reporting of news is because of what they do report on and what they don't report on. And I mean, let me give you an example. The 9/11 terror attack, well, let me give you, first of all, what their message and narrative is. And the cornerstone of it is that on 9/11/01, the whole world changed by the terror attack on America, where 19 hijackers brought America to its knees. That's the cornerstone of the new world order where they want to go. This is the main myth. And 2, that there is a religious group that hates America and wants to destroy it, and that's the Muslims. And 3 is that Muslims hate America because of its alliance with the righteous, peace-loving nation of Israel. And 4 is the Muslims are coming to every nation on earth to harm every nation that supports Israel's right to exist.
Okay, hold on, just
sure.
A second. You're not saying this is what's true. You're saying this is what the media is trying to.
This is the narrative. You're right.
Yes.
This is what they want to form in the American mind, and essentially have been totally successful at doing. And that the 5th one is that Christians and Jews are essentially the same and share the same religious heritage, unlike the Muslims and Christians. And they call this thing Judeo-Christian. But there's a secondary message that they're working on now, which reveals the second phase of their agenda. And that is that that bad people have to go beyond just Muslims. And this is where the lone wolf, homegrown, anti-government terrorists come into play. And they want to cast the idea that this is everywhere, and it's in every town, and it's all over the world, it's every city. Everyone should be on the lookout for them. Now, they don't know how to identify them, of course, until after it happens. But this is what they want to put into your mind. And the idea is that lots of people fit into this secondary message, from Tea Party activists and Ron Paul supporters and conspiracy theorists and all of this stuff, people that are unhappy with taxes or whatever it is. These people can fall into this secondary category, which are essentially homegrown terrorists. And this is exactly what I and this group that I wasn't even a member of became a subject to. They were converting us into their agenda. They were using this agenda and the secondary message that we were right-wing, fascist, hanging out with neo-Nazis, and we're secessionists and trying to break up the United States of America, and then they use these links to show that, oh yeah, the Homeland Security thinks that we would drive violence at home, and in government facilities, and all they had to connect all this together was secessionists. Was that they called us secessionists, which we aren't. I'm not a secessionist. I talk against it all the time, and I have good reasons for it. And neither was the Republic of Texas, because they have all kind of good reasons for opposing it. But the writer of the article called us. Yes.
Hold on, we're about to go to break.
Good.
I'd hate to fall off the cliff again.
You bet.
This is Randy Kelton, Real Talk Radio. I'm turning on the phone lines, and I have Mary Krennick on, and I'll bring her up when we come in the next segment.
Oh, great.
So the phone lines will be open. We'll be right back.
You are listening to the Logos Radio Network. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
Well, don't let nothing get to you. Only the Father can deliver you. So don't let bad mind people hurt you. Until Satan get behind you. Know what I mean? My friend. And all of your children. Come. Those things that hurt me free. Telling your problem then. Call on his name once again. Miracle, you know you worth the aim. Trusting God, me friend. Telling your problem then. Call on his name once again. Miracle, you know you worth the king. He am the king, man, he is everything. He's everything to me, that's what I call him. Put up me knee and me pray to him, because he's the only one good answering. Me no business what wicked man saying. Mankind, you know, if they leading me, but I'm not trusting God, me pray. Tell him your problem, babe. Allah, you call him Jehovah. Call upon his name and you call Rasta. Pray to him and he'll deliver. Miracle he work and he work it all over. Let the blind see and the deaf hear we. Even if the cripple man get up walk, you see. Thank you for Father because he deliver me. Trust in God, me friend. Tell him your problem, them. Call on his name once again. Miracle, you know he work the him. He is the king, earth rightful ruler. That's why I call on his name every hour. Call on his name, let him know I am here.
Okay, we are back. My bad. Somebody muted their mic and forgot to unmute it. I'm not going to mention any names, but his initials are Randy Kelton. Okay, Ron, are you there with us?
I am.
Okay, and I'm going to bring on Mary. Mary Koenig is she's probably the most active activist in Austin, and she is primarily responsible for coordinating getting Ron on the air with us. And Mary, hang on a little bit. We'll give you a chance to chime in shortly.
Take your time.
Ron was finishing up talking about weaponized media, and we got to the point of where they have essentially defined what we are to think about 5 primary issues: the 9/11 attack, religious groups that hate America, and Muslims hate Americans, and it ended with the Judeo-Christian and Muslim myth. Okay, well, let's pick up from there, Ron.
Yeah, okay, Randy, and I think I don't know if we were on the air at the time, but there's a secondary narrative that goes along with that, and that's because I believe that that's pretty obvious that they want to move the mindset to accept a global government, and at the same time, where every individual, there's no secret about this. They don't want borders. They don't want strong, independent nations. They want so it all boils down to this: the individual against global governance, and the next part of this, the secondary agenda they have, is to create the idea that they're a lone wolf, homegrown, anti-government terrorists among your own citizens who have been there all their lives, who are the descendants of the founders, and they're in every country, and they operate. And they're going to operate, and that all kinds of people fall into this category, so that all people should be watching their neighbors and be able and willing to report any suspicious activity. Now, this doesn't mean anybody knows what suspicious activity is, but that's their agenda. Now, I say there are reasons that we know this is an agenda and a message rather than just merely happenstance, or they just reporting on news that they, or whatever. There's a revealed method to what they're doing, and let me show it to you. And here's what I'm going to say. If the mass media had been reporting on news as it really happens, they would have covered several earth-shattering news events, which they never mentioned, much less covered. And that's the discovery of super nanothermite in all the dust samples at the World Trade Center, meaning that the U.S. military explosive was found in the dust samples. Now, they never covered that. They never said a word about it, and it's all over everything, and it's even in chemical magazines, and it's under peer review and been reviewed, and nobody can dispute it. And the next earth-shattering fact is that the discovery of tons of molten iron, a byproduct of a nanothermite reaction, was found in the basements of all 3 World Trade Center skyscrapers 6 weeks after their collapse. And the discovery that the 47-story World Trade Center building collapsed at free-fall acceleration in the first 2.25 seconds, meaning explosive charges had to have been used. Well, that had they reported that, I would say there's no agenda. behind mass media and where they want to take the American and world public.
Now, wait a minute. I thought that the British news reported the collapse. They were so on the spot that they reported the collapse of that building 45 minutes before it fell.
Yeah, they did. They reported that it collapsed before it fell, so they were obviously reading the handed out agenda before, in this case, before it even happened. And of course, that brings up the other idea, which I'm fixing to mention, the two mind-blowing admissions by Larry Silverstein, who was the original developer of the World Trade Center Building 7, which collapsed on 9/11. And he was the leasee of the World Trade Center at the time of 9/11. And 1 year after 9/11-01, he admitted that he told the New York fire commander that because we had had such tremendous loss of life, the smartest thing to do was just pull it, and that they made the decision to pull, and we watched the buildings collapse, or the building collapse. And then 13 years later, in 2014, he admitted in a speech made in Israel that he went to the architects to begin the design of the replacement of Building 7 in April of the year 2000, a full 17 months prior to 9/11-01. And this is why he could start reconstruction of World Trade Center Building 7 so quickly after 9/11-01, because the plans were well in advance, if not complete, by that time. So obviously, the hijacker thing shows that the hijackers really did not cause the collapse of the World Trade Center. And neither the government nor the mass media ever investigated who put the super nanothermite in the World Trade Center, and they never investigated or even questioned Larry Silverstein concerning his role in the demolition of World Trade Center. Now, you can't deny that. This shows complicity in the myth being hardened in the world, that these events were just done by 19 hijackers that got 4 jets and did all this damage, when all these other facts that have come out now to prove that that's not really how it happened. And it just goes on, you see, because now every one of these these more minor terrorist attacks, why should we believe that they are any more real or significant when the huge cornerstone turns out to be a lie? This idea in Brussels that or the one in San Bernardino, the 3 guys in khaki pants and dark windbreakers are seen walking briskly away from the shooting after San Bernardino, and then this couple get shot up in their SUV and are photographed laying on the ground with handcuffed behind their back, and they're dead. I mean, something is way amiss with this stuff. And the Brussels thing now, they say that the guys that did the bombing of the subway or the whatever, they were pushing baggage carts.
Okay,
and one of them had a glove on one hand.
Hold on. We're about to get a break.
Sure.
Randy Kelton, Rule of Law Radio. We'll be right back.
What's Sweet and Gooey? Available at your local supermarket. Costs about $3 and is known to slash your risk of cancer. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and I'll be back with the answer in a moment.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This message is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
If you're a jelly junkie, I've got sweet news for you. Researchers have found that pectin, the all-natural gel that binds liquid ingredients in jams and jellies, slows the growth and spread of cancer. Cancer cells form tumors by joining together with gooey receptors. Pectin, made from apples and the skins of citrus fruits, binds to those receptors before the bad cells can, eventually killing them. Some say pectin cures chronic joint pain and prevents arthritis too. Though I can't vouch for that, it can't hurt to try this natural remedy. Turns out a spoonful of apple pectin a day may actually keep the doctor away. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht for StartPage.com, the world's most private search engine.
Live Free Speech Radio, LogosRadioNetwork.com.
Okay, we are back. Randy Kelton, Rule of Law Radio, here with our special guest, Mr. Ron Avery, and we're going to bring on Mary Krennick for just a moment. Mary was responsible for orchestrating this interview with Ron. And, you know, Austin, Texas is known as one of the most politically active areas in the country. And it's been my experience that Mary is the most active activist in Austin. Hello, Miss Mary.
Hey, guys.
Wouldn't that make her the most active, politically active person in America then?
That was my position.
Well, I'm starting a political action committee here soon, and I'm continuing to do some bar grievance classes at Brave New Books and the 9/11 Truth Group there. They've been willing to host that there. So as soon as I figure out my work schedule and stuff like that, I'll be starting that stuff again so we can have a strong group here. There's some good stuff going on in Dallas. And, you know, Ron has been a very educated and stable, intelligent, rational, practical leader and friend to all of us who like to study history, whether it's about conspiracies or the Constitution or architecture. Ron knows a lot, and he's done a lot. He's been put in the eye of Sauron because he's played host to a lot of patriots in the heart of Texas, and it's unfair what happened in the Houston Chronicle. It was a complete profile, and my concern is they're setting him up to be a target for a false flag event for his group. And I don't know how much I went into the case again tonight, but, you know, when they send down two freaking lawyers from New York City, I'm like, well, I'm going to drop what I was doing and drive down there and watch court and get my pen and paper out, and I'm going to keep my mouth shut. I'm going to be polite and respectful, and I'm going to take notes. And I'm going to sit on the other side up front so I can see and hear everything, because they never have the mics working for the audience, which can be really hard if you're a journalist as well.
Mary, you might try the old hearing aid trick that I pulled on a JP in Mansfield, Texas. I asked him to turn the sound up because I told him I had a hearing defect, and he said, "Mr. Kelton, what's the matter with your hearing?" "Oh, Judge, I was down in Mexico the other day and I drank too much of that cheap tequila and lost my hearing aid." And then when he wouldn't turn the sound up, I asked the bailiff to arrest him. That was great fun. But
yeah, how long did you spend in jail after that?
I didn't. That was the most effective thing I've ever done. I was amazed. Yeah. Because we got out of the courtroom, I asked the judge to turn the sound up, and he refused. So I asked him to speak up, and he did. And he told the bailiff that if I didn't sit down and shut up, he's to throw me out of the courtroom. Well, when my hearing was over, I started to leave. I told the bailiff, "You come with me." We get out in the hall, and I told the bailiff I wanted to arrest the judge, and he said, "Well, why?" I said, "Class A misdemeanor, official oppression, criminal violation, 3903 Penal Code, in that he failed to perform a duty he was required to perform, and in the process denied me full free access to or enjoyment of a right." "Well, what right did he deny you in?" "He denied me in my right to accommodation for the hearing for the Americans with Disabilities Act." The bailiff said,
"Got him there."
He said, "Mr. Kelton, why didn't you tell the judge about the Americans with Disabilities Act?" Heck, if I'd have done that, he might have turned the sound up. And the bailiff stood there a minute, and this grin started across his face. I was surprised. The bailiff was absolutely elated. "You set him up." I said, "Yeah, he was a sucker for that, wasn't he?" I went to a political event 2 days later, and that bailiff was running security. Called me over, and he had a half a dozen bailiffs over there. This is the guy that set up the judge. And after that, every time we get in front of a JP in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, man, are they ever careful with me. So I think that the fact that they found out that we wasn't afraid of them seemed to terrify them. And Miss Mary there, when we were down at the Senate, the House Subcommittee, Criminal Justice Subcommittee, I thought I was going to have to pull her off the who was the Sergeant at Arms. I was afraid she was going to beat them all up. Mary gets pretty active sometimes.
I want to respond, Randy, to what Mary was saying here, too. I think she made a very good point here, was that she was concerned that I and a group of people that had been meeting that the newspaper reported on may be being set up for a raid or some kind of thing like that, or even a false flag thing. Something goes, somebody blows something up and blames it on us, like false flag events are designed to do. And I'm going to say I think she's exactly right that's why I responded in the way I did by suing them, because first of all, none of the stuff they said was really true. It was false, and it was damaging. And I think they're actually carrying out their secondary agenda, which is to demonize and make terrorists out of essentially every citizen in the world, of every place, and to turn their neighbors on one another. And then so the news media can just say who's bad, and then an event happens, and then they blame it on them. Nobody says anything. Nobody questions it. Nobody has any proof otherwise, and that just becomes the hardened fact. And when maybe none of it is a fact, like 9/11. So little of it is actually really factual but they've made the cornerstone of the new millennium out of it, and they're trying to carry it on. And now the secondary part of it is that it's not just Muslims anymore that's terrorist, and that was one of the main points they made in their article. That they put another article in there that said that right-wing extremists, the growing right-wing terror threat, was the name of the article, and that was trying to show that right-wing anti-government people are more dangerous than Muslim terrorists in America. And this is their agenda. They're pushing it, and that's what they tried to make us out to be. And the public got it because they wrote it down in the blog afterwards that we were just like Muslims, and we ought to be rounded up, sent to Gitmo, and waterboarded. And I don't believe these newspapers should be allowed to do this. I don't think they ought to be able to make anybody into a terrorist. They want to do that and run around and do this kind of stuff. When they get that wrong, and they're creating stuff, and we know they're doing it, they ought to be hammered. These people ought to be hammered to not do that anymore.
And I was thinking when Mary was saying that your response was exactly the right response. We get people on the air that advocate armed resistance to these guys, and guys, I tell them I'm an ex-combat veteran, and in that context, when you pick a fight, you need to make sure you can win that fight.
Yeah.
Don't get into a fight just because you can. Back up, look around. What is your best strategy from this point?
Sure.
And Ron did it exactly right. They could hardly create a false flag against him once he's got them in court and squeezing them on their own law.
That's right. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, you took all of the momentum out of that article, and now you got the newspaper defending themselves, and that is not a place they want to be in.
Right. And they've got it dismissed now, but I fully intend to appeal this. And you know what? They may be appealing it themselves because the judge, when he signed the order dismissing it, he scratched out all the attorney's fees that they had asked for a future motion to set attorney's fees, expenses, and costs. And he just scratched all that stuff out and signed it and initialed it where he scratched it out.
Okay, hang on. We're about to go to break.
Sure.
Randy Kelton, Rule of Law Radio. Call-in number 512-646-1984. We'll probably do one more segment, and then we'll go to our calls. So we'll be right back.
That was great.
Easy.
I like to know just what I'm fishing for. I ain't asking for much, I ain't trying to be no glutton. I'm just here making my living, pushing buttons. I get my message out to anyone in shouting distance. I vote for bravery and against slavery, showing resistance. First I'm crawling, then I'm walking, then I start strutting. I'm just so glad to make my living, pushing buttons. Whoa, 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 yeah.
Okay, we are back. Randy Kelton, Rule of Law Radio, and we're going to finish up with this segment, and then we'll go to the callers. Okay, Ron, there was one more thing you wanted to address.
Yeah, I just wanted to finish up by saying that when the judge signed the order dismissing the case, he scratched out the attorney's the request for future motion to establish a reasonable attorney's fees and expenses and costs So, but what the judge, I don't know if he realized it or not, under this Texas Citizen Participation Act, once a judge finds that the case should be dismissed, the attorney's fees, costs, and expenses are mandatory, and he has to award them. And also, he can, and it even says, and should, he shall award sanctions to prevent the filing of a SLAPP suit like this in the future by the plaintiff. So the punishment is mandatory under this act, but there was the problem is that in the haste to quickly get it dismissed, the attorneys did not put in the record any information about their attorney's fees. So there's no evidence in the file, no affidavit, no nothing about attorney's fees. So even if the judge wanted to find them, there was nothing to find in there, and he couldn't award them. So it looks like, in reality, if I appeal it, that the defendants will also appeal on their own, requesting the mandatory attorney's fees, costs, and expenses, and even the sanctions. So that's kind of an amazing deal.
It raises an interesting question. And the way it sounds is the judge is required to grant attorney fees or sanctions.
That's right, and it's also that he's required to punish the plaintiff, because what a granting of this motion really says is that this motion, that the lawsuit is groundless and is a SLAPP suit designed purely to prevent the exercise of liberties. And I'll be damned if that's what my lawsuit is. And they better well know it. I mean, this is ridiculous. This suit is not about that. And I can't believe he even granted it under these conditions. I mean, it's bizarre. It's beyond comprehension.
It's been my experience that when you are a pro se, the courts will just about rule against you out of hand at every turn without regard for the right of things or the rule of law.
Well, I'm not so sure that that's always the case, because I'm sure too that even if you had a lawyer, I've had a lawyer and gone up on appeal many times and had many things ruled against them where I had to appeal it. Now, but we won on appeal. But that doesn't mean that they're going to rule in your favor just because you have an attorney.
Well, possibly
and in fact, I've been talking to an attorney, and I asked him yesterday. I said, "What if he wanted to actually handle the appeal?" I said, it might be better. And he said, "No, Ron," he said, "it's not going to be any better on me than it is on you. So you just go on up there with your stuff. I think these guys don't have a defense that I can see. And you just take it on up there, and you're going to do about as well as I can do with it."
Yeah, so, in this case, I would tend to agree with him, and that's what I tend to agree with, is where you expect to win it is an appeal. And I tell everybody, expect them to rule against you in the trial court. That way you don't feel like you don't feel so devastated when they do. You expect it.
Yeah. Well, you're right, and that's the way I approached it too. So I wasn't devastated. I just got my stuff together and planning on appeal.
And the appeal is where the action is, because now you have a court of appeals. They have to maintain the corpus juris. They have a different agenda than that trial court does.
Yeah.
If they render this ruling, and if they rule against you, the most likely outcome will be is that the legislature will pick this up and readjust the legislation.
Well, that'd be great. I'd love to see that, because this thing's got some real glitch in it,
Yeah, and I'm going to bet that what you're going to do is give the Court of Appeals an opportunity to distinguish the code. And
I intend to do that. That's going to be one of my points in going up there.
Is while this statute can be enforced constitutionally, if you define this term this way and apply it this way, then it causes the whole statute to be unconstitutional. So they would have to go
against its own purpose as well. I mean, it defies its purpose.
In my experience, they like good, hard legal questions.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right about it.
So I'm confident. You have a good case here.
I think you're right, Randy, and I appreciate you for having me on, by the way, and Mary Krennick for getting me on there. And it's been a pleasure talking with you as usual when I have done so. And I thank Logos Radio Network and all, and Deborah Stevens and everybody.
Okay, I'm glad to have you because of what we do. We try to avoid the patriot mythology.
Yes, right.
And I don't get many of the patriot mythologists on the show anymore because I really take them to task. And right. With you, there's nothing to take to task because you're right.
Good. I appreciate it.
We take their law, use their law against them, and that's effective.
Yes, I agree.
No silver bullets. That's
the same here.
Bullets.
No silver bullets.
Okay. Thank you very much. And
thank you, Randy.
I look forward to having you on again once you've won this appeal.
I love it. Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
Okay. Thank you. And Miss Mary.
Yes, sir.
Are you there, Miss Mary?
Yes, I am.
There you
hear me?
You go. Okay. Yes, I can. And thank you for organizing this and getting Ron on the air for us.
My pleasure. Can you hear me well?
Okay. Yes, I can hear you. And I do want to address your issue, but your issue is going to take some time, and we've used up too much of the show. I would like you on as a guest next Thursday.
Right.
Okay, I'm kind of losing you.
Next Thursday is great. I just want to say that Ron is an excellent man. He has done a lot for freedom and knowledge and history and leadership. And he deserves all of our support, all of our interest. And I was, when our friends go to court, it's our duty to go and watch, be respectful, dress well, take notes, record if you can, and keep it in a public history, public record. We kind of have our side versus their side sometimes, so we need to make sure we keep good records.
Okay, and one thing, if the Sergeant at Arms shows up, keep him away from Mary Krennick. We were at a subcommittee hearing, and I thought I was going to have to pull Mary off of him. She gets pretty active sometimes.
They made us turn video equipment off during a public hearing, guys, at the legislature. It's not public up there, unless you're there.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mary. I always enjoy your presence, and I would look forward to having you on this Thursday.
Will do. Have a great week.
Okay, thank you, Miss Mary. Now we're going to go to Jim, back to Jim in Texas, and let me go back to this code. The reason I don't know, we had such a gap here. Let me paraphrase where we were at. We're talking about taking on the right to travel issue, and if we're going to win the case, we need to do it strategically. So before you talk about the right to travel, the government, the plaintiff, has to establish that it has the authority to hear anything that's said. And in order to get that authority, it has to establish subject matter jurisdiction. The first thing the officer must do before he purports to enforce a particular law or statute is he has to demonstrate that he has authority to enforce that law or statute. Well, when I read the requirements, the way I read the transportation code, you can only have 5 people in a county enforcing the transportation code.
Story for everyone to hear about how we're not gonna give in to the fear. Yeah, it's a story. I will lie by my father's house till he returns. I will lie by my father's
we are back. Randy Kelton, Rule of Law Radio. We're talking to Jim in Texas. And, okay, thing to do first is we go after subject matter jurisdiction. Now, when we talked last night, we talked about going after them strategically. Yes. And what I like to do is go in and ask for information they're either not going to want to give me or not going to understand where I'm going or what I'm looking for. So I plan on going down there early in the week, and I'll start out by pulling her file. So this is Weatherford in Parker County, Texas, and they know who I am down there. They've had some run-ins with me, and this particular judge, Judge Buckner, has had a run-in with me where I tried to get the district attorney to arrest him. So he is not going to be happy when I show up. So how do we use that background, that reputation I have, to get them to want to go back and revisit what they're doing? So you can't do that with a direct threat. You can't. If we go in and we say, you didn't do this like you were supposed to, and we push them, then they're going to say, oh, yeah, we did, and they're going to push right back. So let's get them to try to figure out how we're going to try to sting them. Now, the judge is going to pretty well think that I'm going to be coming after him, because that's what I did last time. I tried to get him arrested. And so what can we do to give the judge reason to believe that he may have done something that'll make him vulnerable?
Ask him for his oath of office?
Yeah. First thing you need to do is contact the court and find out who the court reporter is, and ask the court if they have a method of requesting a transcript, or do I have to do that directly with the court reporter? And if so, I need the court reporter's name and business address. So that'll start this thing rolling. And then when I come down there, which will probably be Tuesday, I have to come into town Tuesday anyway, and I don't have a show on Tuesday. So after you request the transcripts on Monday, then, and the thing about transcripts is anybody can request them. Since your wife does, have you filed a affidavit of inability to pay?
No, sir.
Okay. File an affidavit of inability to pay and request the transcripts. That way you can get them. You don't have to pay for them. And have your wife do that from inside the jail.
Okay, sir.
Okay. I can help you make up the affidavit, or ask the court for it. You go down and ask the court for their form for a affidavit of inability to pay and motion for court-appointed counsel. And ask for court-appointed counsel. I'll show you how to take care of the counsel. And then I will come down and start asking for some really directed pieces of information. One of the things I want to see are payments to court-appointed counsel. I want to see all of the payments to all court-appointed counsel for the last month. And they're going to say, why is he asking us for that? And they can ask me why I'm asking for that, but I'm not going to tell them. What I tell them is, don't ask me that. Okay, that's the first thing. And here's the reason I'll be asking for that. I live in Wise County. And in Wise County, court-appointed counsel, if they get a client and the client goes into a plea bargain with the court will pay the lawyer $250. If the client does not agree to a plea bargain, they'll pay the lawyer $125. So how does that work? So it is. We had someone on there once who was fighting, who was pretty knowledgeable, and he had court-appointed counsel, and he's trying to get the counsel to do different things. And finally, the lawyer got frustrated and told him, look, my only job is to make sure you don't have anything you can appeal. Is that a fact, Jack? And that's what we think your wife's lawyer was originally doing. And then we put together a malpractice suit against the lawyer. Since you fired the lawyer before you got to court, then you have option to sue. If you go to court and lose your case, you've got law that says you can't sue the lawyer for malpractice because you lose. So since you fired him before you lost, now you can sue him. So you send a notice of tort to the lawyer, and we'll bar grieve the lawyer. We may bar grieve the lawyer a couple of times. I need to know what all he has done. Oh, did your wife request from the lawyer all of the lawyer's records that he has on your case?
We've requested everything. They wouldn't even let us use any of the transportation codes in the courtroom. They said they were scofflaws.
No. Different issue. I understand that. We'll get to that. We're not there yet.
We didn't have anything.
First, they got to establish authority and jurisdiction to get to the court.
Yes.
Those issues are for appeal. And since you filed a notice of appeal, you've got, I believe, 30 or 60 days. I need to recheck. It's a county court. It's probably 30 days to prepare an appeal. But first, we need to I'll do some digging from outside. And then we'll prepare some discovery that your wife can do from inside. And we'll prepare a challenge subject matter jurisdiction for the wife to file. You take it to her, and she'll file it from inside. But first thing she needs is an affidavit of inability to pay, and it almost has to be granted because she's in jail. And then before they can do that, we'll get her probably a habeas corpus.
Yes, sir.
A habeas is we show that the court lacks subject matter jurisdiction, and we'll prepare a challenge subject matter jurisdiction and file along with the habeas. So that's likely to get them excited. Then they'll see bad things coming at them, and then you file a bar grievance against the lawyer and the prosecutor. And we'll work out how to do that. You can bar grieve the prosecutor for not telling the judge when he's screwing up. And we're maintaining that the court lacks subject matter jurisdiction from the beginning, and it was the duty of the prosecutor to notify the court that it lacks subject matter jurisdiction. So you bar grieve the lawyer for that. And it's most likely an assistant district attorney and not the elected district attorney. If it's an assistant district attorney, they don't expect to be there forever. And you bar grieve them when they get out. Their malpractice insurance is going to go through the roof on them, and they know it. So that stings them. And you might want to get a couple of bar grievances in. That way they can't get malpractice insurance. You want a couple of bar grievances on your original court-appointed counsel. And you want a lawsuit against the court-appointed counsel. Now you ask them to appoint you new counsel. And when you sue court-appointed counsel, every lawyer in the venue is going to know about it. And then when the judge appoints somebody else, he's going to have a fit because he knows you're going to do the same thing to him.
Mm-hmm.
Unless he makes you happy. This is politics. Okay, when you go to court, it's like sitting at a three-sided chessboard. Across from you, to your right, you have your lawyer. To your left, you have opposing counsel. Across from you, you have the judge. Now, multiple-sided chess is all about relationships. Some of the players have to gang up on the other players to start eliminating them one at a time. So when you go to court, it's all about relationships. You have a relationship with your lawyer. Your lawyer has a relationship with opposing counsel because they deal with one another all the time. And he has a relationship with the judge. They both have a relationship with the judge. You're the odd one out. So if you don't do anything, they will use their relationships against you. And in this case, the judge and a prosecutor use their influence and relationship with your court-appointed counsel to influence court-appointed counsel to make sure you take a deal and you don't have grounds for appeal. So in this case, you fired the chump, so he wasn't able to do that. Now, you want to force them to give you another one. But before they give you another one, you want to professionally beat up the one you had by bar grieving him a couple times and then file a malpractice suit against him. And what do you think this next lawyer who gets appointed is going to say? Holy crap, guys, what did you get me into? Now he has plausibility deniability. Now you can take his relationship with the judge and the opposing counsel and use it to your benefit. He gets to tell the judge, you gave me this client who's out of control. Now this client is likely to ruin my career. You got to do something to protect me from my client. Last case I had in Austin, they dismissed my case to protect my lawyer from me. Because the lawyer was afraid I was going to bar grieve him. If I bar grieved him, he's a new lawyer, he would lose his malpractice insurance immediately, then he couldn't practice. So he's terrified I'm going to cost him his ability to practice. Yeah, and the judge dismissed the case clearly to keep me from grieving the lawyer. I gave the lawyer a whole stack of criminal complaints to give to the prosecutor, and he held up his hands. I'm not going to touch him. I'm not going to touch him. Take him, you chicken. And I did this right in front of the judge. Went out to lunch. While I'm at lunch, they dismissed the case. Hang on. We're talking about the politics of law. Randy Kelton, Rule of Law Radio. Our call-in number, 512-646-1984. We'll be right back.
This is the Logos Radio Network.
Oh, come on. If I can't get everything I want, yeah, let me get a range, yeah. If I can't get everything I need, yeah, let me get a range, yeah. If the people of the world can't get happiness and peace, so let me get a range, yeah. We can't get all these crazy wars to see, maybe get a range, yeah. Looking for a little bitty smidgen to hold. Could I get a range, yeah? I wanna reach the top of the hill, sliding on a slippery slope. Looking for a range, yeah. Trying to get away from all this sorrow.
Okay, we are back. Randy Kelton, Rule of Law Radio. We were finalizing out some of our issues, and we're getting everything straightened out. We had some storms down in Austin, and they give us a little bit of a hiccup, but we're getting all that straightened out. Okay. Back to how to handle your lawyer. Lawyers are terrified. Lawyers go through law school, and they incur an incredible amount of debt, about up on the order of $150,000 to $180,000. And they get out of law school, and if a law firm doesn't pick them up, they have a lot of trouble getting started. Because in law school, they don't teach them how to get motions filed, how to get them put on for hearing. All of these technical details that involve the actual practice of law, they don't know. And as a result, one of the ways to pay their office help is being court-appointed counsel. And so most of these guys on the attorney wheels are either new lawyers or they're lawyers who, when they were in college, thought they were the mascot for the beer companies. You know, not everybody graduates at the top of their class. The ones who graduate at the top of their class get picked up by law firms. The ones that are down toward the bottom don't, so they struggle. So the judges were lawyers, and they're all part of the same group, so they all work together. They appoint these guys as court-appointed counsel to get them some dollar flow, and they don't want them to work too hard. Actually, what they want them to do is just get their client to take a deal. They don't have to do much of anything. And if he takes a deal, you can't appeal because you've agreed to everything. The only time they have a problem is when one of these rascal clients actually believes he's innocent. And they hate that. So in the process, the judge is going to pretty well take care of the new lawyer. And the prosecutor the same way. They're not going to hammer this lawyer very hard because they want to train him and bring him along. They're all part of the process. So there's this politics there. There's all this influence, political influence from one party to another. Generally, that influence is used against you, but if you know how to do it, you can turn it back and use it to your favor. What your lawyer needs is plausible deniability. And the way you give your lawyer plausible deniability is kick him right in his professional behind. And here, if you file a bar grievance against the first lawyer, that's going to sting him big time. And then you do a malpractice suit against him. This guy's not going to be able to practice for a while. The only way he's going to be able to practice is if he goes to work for another law firm, and they're going to put him to work at $15-20 an hour. And he's got $100,000 student loan to pay off. So he'll be struggling for a while. You'll really hurt the lawyer. But he deserves it. And then you ask for another lawyer, and the other lawyer is going to be really, really unhappy that he's getting forced to step into this lion's den. So it's very likely that his influence with the judge, this good old boy network, is going to put the judge in a position to where he has to protect the lawyer. And the only way he can protect the lawyer from the lawyer's client is to give the client what the client wants. Does that make sense, Jim?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I know this is not how you were taught in school to think about how the law works, but this is how it actually works in the real world. Everything is political. Okay, so on your part, or on your wife's part, she will get her a habeas corpus.
Yes.
She will ask for a affidavit of inability to pay and a request for transcripts. And then I'll go in and ask to see all of the files. And that's going to make them real unhappy. And then I'll put in a request for payment to lawyers from court-appointed counsel payments, because I want to see if the lawyers are paid the same thing for representing a client if they plea out or if they fight the case. But I'm not going to tell them. They're going to have to try to figure out what I'm after. And I'll figure out some other really obnoxious things to ask them for. And maybe the habeas may be enough. If we get a good habeas in, they might decide they want this case to go away, that they want to have a fight, especially if you sue the lawyer. Because if you sue the lawyer, now you have something to negotiate with. So what the prosecutor is likely to do is come to you and make a deal in order to get you to drop the suit against this lawyer. Because they got him to screw it up. You call him on it, now they owe it to him to protect him.
Yes, sir.
Okay, does that sound like a plan?
Sounds like a good plan. My biggest question is, how do I get this stuff to her?
Oh, you just take it to the jail. Say, this is for your wife, and they have to give it to her.
Okay.
So that's easy enough. It's probably best if you mail it.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, and mail it certified, return receipt. Somebody's going to have to sign for it.
Yes, sir.
And that way you can establish that it was actually mailed. Or you check with the jail. They may have, they almost certainly has a policy for mail.
Yes, sir.
And if you label it legal documents, they can't open it.
Okay.
Okay, so but we'll talk. Call me Monday and we'll go through what we need to get started. I want you to get in there and get your side started before I show up.
Yes, sir.
Because when you start asking for the right things, they're going to wonder who's advising you. And then when I show up, they're going to be sure I am.
Yes, sir.
And that's going to make them real unhappy.
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any other questions for now?
Just what time would you like me to contact you?
No, just any time in the morning on Monday.
Okay, sure.
Early is better.
Okay.
After 10 or 11, my phones tend to light up and I get pretty busy. So just call me early morning. Just don't call before 5 in the morning.
No, I will not.
I'm an early riser, so anytime Monday morning will be fine.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. Now we're going to go to Scott in Texas. Hello, Scott.
Good evening, Randy. Well,
you've got 10 seconds. Make it fast.
Oh, 10 seconds?
Just kidding. We're about to go to break. Hang on. Randy Kelton, Rule of Law Radio. A call-in number 512-646-1984. We'll be right back.
In Wisconsin, an elderly woman who housed orphans was about to lose her home to foreclosure when her 12-year-old grandson came to the rescue. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, back with the story of Noah the Dreamcatcher after this.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This message is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
For years, Janice Sparhawk cared for dozens of orphans, many dropped on her doorstep after dark. But at 72, she was in trouble. Her health failing, she couldn't pay the mortgage. Unless she found $10,000, the bank would foreclose. She appealed to her congressman, her governor, and even the president, but it was her grandson, Noah, who saved the day. The 12-year-old posted her story on a website he'd created 3 years earlier, Noah's Dreamcatcher Network, to help hurricane victims. Within days, enough money had poured in to rescue Sparhawk, her foster kids, and their faith in America. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht for StartPage.com, the world's most private search engine.
About chemtrails.
You are listening to the Logos Radio Network. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
I see two.
Okay, we are back. Randy Kelton, Rule of Law Radio, and we're talking to Scott in Texas. Okay, Scott, what do you have for us today?
Okay, well, let's address some of the issues that you were talking about today, especially with the license plate thing. My deal is now, because I originally thought, oh, yeah, I want to take my license plates off, put the not for hire thing on there, yada, yada, yada. But since the events have happened in the way they have, getting, the Addison case going and several other tickets and things like that, and then once I started filing criminal charges against a judge and then a cop, the attitude towards me with the cops have seemed to change dramatically because they've obviously flagged my license, and because I've noticed that cops will pull up behind me, they'll run my license plate, and instead of pulling me over, they'll just go around me. Now I test the theory a little bit different. I run around without my tags and inspection on my car. It's pretty trivial, seems like, but it's also a good kind of testing ground because when they see me driving around without that tag or inspection, they'll automatically come up behind me and they're going to want to pull me over. But then when they run my plate, they have a whole different attitude. Then,
okay, let me interject here, and I'm glad you spoke to this way, because when I said earlier, if you decide to take tags off your car, then that's a strategic decision. Before you do that, you have to determine that you are prepared to fight this fight. And in Scott's case, he was absolutely prepared to fight this fight. He did his homework. He put in the time he needed to put in so that when they came after him, he was ready for them. That is important. You need to stop them early on. And Jim's wife had 3 tickets for expired license. It shouldn't have gotten that far. The fight should have been on the first one. Big time. Keep them from coming back to the second or third. But you can eventually pick it up. You don't want to have to pick it up once you're serving 90 days in jail. We expect that we'll get her out a whole lot quicker than that, because that's what this other guy in Parker County was serving, same time for the same thing. And they got him out pretty quick on the habeas. So anyway, that was, if you're ready to fight this fight, and we have some tools that can help you fight this. I say we, me, and Eddie Craig. Then do your homework first, and then take it on. Okay, go ahead. I'll shut up now.
No, but you're absolutely correct. And once you've done your homework and you're absolutely ready, then you are picking the fight now, and you're dictating the narrative on how things are going to go because you already have planned ahead. You already know that, okay, I'm going to get a ticket. Okay, I'm going to file charges on a cop or a judge, and you know how to do it. You're basically 3 or 4 moves ahead of the court system because you're planning on everything that they're going to come against you, and you're going to get pretty much railroaded. But if you're prepared for that, now your mindset's a whole lot different. Your attitude's a whole lot different too, because instead of being really mad and going and just letting your emotions take over, now you're starting to use your intellect. And then like I say, once you can start changing your whole mindset, they notice this. And when you start smiling at them instead of, cussing at them and, verbally throwing rocks, then they kind of get a little bit nervous too, because all of a sudden you're not scared, you're not intimidated. And that is probably one of the biggest barriers that people have to overcome. Once they do that, they will see the change. And the change is, we want to show the police that, hey, what you're doing is wrong, but your policy and the way you're training is you're not upholding the rule of law, so we're going to force you to by bringing it to light.
Yes, and the one primary problem you will have, and Scott is struggling with this at the moment, is that it becomes way too much fun. You're used to them coming after you. You feel yourself squirming under the pressure they put on you. When you turn that around on them, and you get to watch these police officers standing there doing this little chicken dance, and the little chicken dance is where they're trying to figure a way around what you're throwing at them, and they wind up there shifting from one foot to the other, and they kind of bob back and forth like a chicken. The first time I saw that, it reminded me of a trip I took to Florida, and I was just from Florida to Chicago, and I'm just north of Atlanta. And there's a chicken truck in front of me. It's got chicken crates stacked up on it. And a chicken has got out at the back on the last crate. He's right up on the top. It's tapered up like a pyramid. And he's right one step below the top of the whole thing. And they're running down the road about 70 miles an hour, and this chicken is standing there. And he kept poking his head up over that crate. And I'm back here behind him waiting for that chicken to try to jump up on that crate so I can see him get plucked at 70 miles an hour. It didn't occur to me that he had wind up coming through my windshield if he did that, but I was younger and more ignorant then. But then when I saw one of these policemen kind of just straighten up and then shift from one foot to the other, it reminded me of that chicken on that crate, thinking about jumping up on top of it. And I get so tickled, it's hard for me to keep a straight face. But when you do that, for the officer, what it does is causes a thing we call pattern interruption. You make their expectations come false. And this is something that works on a really subtle level. My local district judge almost went berserk on me. He threatened to have me arrested. And when the bailiff came over, because I'm pressing the judge on the fact that he denied me in a right. And he called the bailiff over. And the bailiff put his hand on my arm. And I looked down at his hand, and then I looked down at his pistol, and I said, Mr. Bailiff, I see you wearing a pistol. Yes, Mr. Kelton, I am. And I almost grinned at him, and I had to struggle not to. And I said, tell me, Mr. Bailiff, is that pistol loaded? And as soon as I said that, the judge said, Mr. Bailiff, you can stand down. The judge is looking at me, and he's thinking, something's not right here. I'm threatening to have him arrested, and he's clearly got some other agenda going on because he is not impressed. And the judge was absolutely right. I will be presenting him or giving notice to the grand jury of first-degree felony aggravated assault against him. When you are a step ahead of them, they know. One of my favorite stories is Ken Magnuson's in court. He files a motion. The judge rules against him. He stands up and offers a motion for reconsideration to the court. And the judge said, well, Mr. Magnuson, you already had that prepared. Well, yes, Your Honor, I did. Well, Mr. Magnuson, it seems you were a step ahead of the court. And Ken raised 3 fingers. That's where you want to be. And in traffic, it is so consistent, so predictable. You can be there. It's not hard. And once they come across someone they can't intimidate, they can't push around and can't frighten, and they realize that you're setting them up, it turns everything around. Hang on, about to go to break. Randy Kelton, Rules of Law Radio. I won't even give out the call numbers. We got Rod and Alex. I'll try to get, probably won't get to both of you and the other side, but I'll move this along pretty quickly. Okay, I even got ahead of myself. This has been a odd night. Things have been going haywire all evening, but we'll be right back. Okay, we are back. Randy Kelton, Rules of Law Radio, and things are improving greatly, guys. We have Scott that we know of in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Now, Scott went into court in Rockwall with Eddie Craig's paperwork. Will you tell about that? About the guy in front of you? Scott?
Yeah. Yes, actually, it was really ironic because I turned in a subject matter jurisdiction, and it also had a criminal complaint against the cop. Well, the guy before me had the exact same motion, and so I'm listening to the judge kind of ream this guy and give him the railroad on this motion, and then next, so she, says, "Oh, I'm going to dismiss your motion on both counts," blah, 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 and then it's my turn, and then we go through. But here's the difference. Here, this guy was doing everything he could to try to, make some kind of points about his motion and argue this point, argue that point. When she dismissed everything and said, no, I'm not accepting any of that. When it was my turn, I didn't argue anything. All I asked the judge was, did you read the motion? And she went off on a little tirade raid, and then the little city attorney got up and he babbled for a little bit. And then it came back to me, and I just came back to the same question. I said, Judge, did you read the motion? And I finally was starting to get under her skin because I was forcing her to answer the question, and she didn't like it. And she finally got a little bit nasty, and she goes, yes, I read the motion. And I said, Judge, you're going to deny my motion? Yes, I'm going to deny your motion. I said, on what ground? And she says, the law. I said, we're done here, Judge. And that just fried everybody's brain right there because they're like, what? And I was like, we're done. That's it. I got nothing else to say. And, I said, it's the thing where you tell them you don't agree with I can't believe I'm going to a brain fart now. But anyway, I basically told her, with all due respect, and I was kind of being a little salty about it, but being really nice is kind of the nice way of saying, pissed off or whatever. And she was like, oh, with all due respect, thank you. And then when the whole thing was over, she was kind of like, what is going on? There's these motions going around on the internet? And I said, Judge, it's Rule of Law Radio. And I said, we're coming back to take over the court. And she kind of just sat there and just looked at me a little wild-eyed. And a couple of the bailiffs, they were kind of sitting around grinning and stuff. They didn't really know what to think. And I just said, that's it. We're done. And here's the thing I want to convey to a lot of people or everybody. All kinds of motions, but the one motion so far that I filed was when I asked for discovery to get the video camera evidence from the cops, especially in the Addison case. When I submitted that, Addison wrote me back a letter saying they're going to hold the hearing for the discovery to see if they even wanted to proceed. I don't want to give up that information because I already have that video. It's got over 1.8 million hits on YouTube. And so they don't want nobody else getting that video, especially from their side. So now they're looking at any way they can to dismiss this case and get me out of there at all costs. And I'm happy with that.
Their problem with that is if they decide they don't want to proceed, you still get to request the video. Open Records Act. or actually a public court. So that don't help them. They figure if they dismiss the case, you go away and leave them alone.
Right. Well,
good luck on that, guys.
Yeah. Well, there's going to be a lot of surprises for a lot of these little cities, because I got one in basically Dallas County, Rockwell County, and Denton County. And so far, when I started coming back at them, they punted and all the court dates back 3 months. It was like all of a sudden everybody's starting to go, I don't really want to talk to this guy right now. And the more paperwork I submit, it seems like the more they kind of get a little bit leery. So my advice to everybody is study hard, listen to the show regularly, and fight it at all costs. And
let me interject here. This is not about getting out of a ticket. This is about you and I doing our job. We are the stewards of this system for our children and our grandchildren. We owe it to our children and our grandchildren to bequeath this system to them in better shape than when we got it. That's what this is about. And it's certainly not about harming a public official. You don't want to do any harm to a police officer. I just talked to a couple of police officers in the courthouse a couple of days ago, and they know about my radio show. And I told them, we're not against officers. I don't know a single police officer that became a police officer so he could be a jackbooted thug. They want to be the good guys. They want to help people, and they get into a system they didn't create, and they get stuck inside it. So we owe it to them to help fix the system they're stuck in. They can't fix it because they're stuck in it. But we can. We can run over their bosses and their bosses' bosses. We can run over them roughshod because they're the servants, we're their masters. Once we understand that, then our only purpose is to make sure they follow the law the way it's written, not to harm them. If one gets harmed in the process, life is tough. We're all grown-ups here. If we screw up, we take our lumps. You claim I screwed up. You want me to pay this ticket. I claim you screwed up. I want you to pay more in malpractice insurance. So we just follow the thunder. Okay, enough of that. Okay, Scott, we only have 4 minutes left. I'm going to throw you out of here. I got 2 more callers, and I'm out of time.
Okay.
Thank you, Scott. Don't be a stranger.
Okay.
Okay, now we're going to go to Rob in New Mexico. Hello, Rob.
Hey, Randy, did you get a chance to read that motion for expedited hearing I sent you?
I absolutely did not. I was, before the show started, I was looking for, I knew I had 2 or 3 things I had to look at, and I couldn't find but one of them, and that was Ron Avey's Points and Authority, so I did not get through yours. If you will call me Monday, I will try to have gotten through it by the end, and maybe we can go over it next Thursday.
Let me real briefly ask you, this motion for expedited hearing is for something in their counterclaim. There is no prior motion that they're asking for a hearing on, so they're basically just asking for a partial summary judgment is what it looks like. And a motion.
Okay, what are they asking for summary judgment on?
Possession of the property.
The focused issue.
Possession of the property and or payment for the property.
Wait, possession of the property and or what?
Payment.
Oh, okay.
Either take the property back or get the court to order me to pay for it.
Oh, okay. So they're asking you to what? To tender or to pay a monthly payment?
Either a monthly payment or surrender the property, yeah.
And then you're going to say, no, wait a minute. I've been given a monthly payments, and they have not been properly dispersing my payments. So I'm going to give them more so they can improperly disperse them? That's the point of this whole case.
Right.
Okay, for those who don't remember, he paid for insurance. He gave them money for insurance, and then he didn't pay for the insurance. They didn't buy the insurance. So he's sitting here uninsured while he's paid for the insurance. And excuse me, the insurance amounts were included in his payments. So now they're asking the judge to order him to give them more payments so they can misappropriate more funds. That's absurd. I could have fun with that.
All right. Let's have some fun with it.
Yes. Well, you do the argument to it. They're asking for summary judgment, and summary judgment, they would have to show that there's no issues in contention here. How are they claiming they have a right to summary judgment?
Because their attorney that I've got in federal court for Fair Debt Collection Practices Act violations filed a notice of default in the county records after I filed a notice of default.
Oh, okay. They're claiming because they filed a notice of default?
Yeah.
Okay, and their notice of default is after your notice of default. But does your notice of default necessarily negate the debt? Okay, let me explain why I'm saying this. You have a promissory note where you promise to pay, and you have a security instrument. They're defaulting you on the security instrument, not on the promise to pay.
Well, they're one and the same. This is the seller financed real estate contract, so there's no mortgage.
No. They're by the same actor, but they're not exactly the same. They're saying although they defaulted the deed of trust, but you still have a promise to pay, and they're asking for payment on the promise to pay. But I'm sorry, that's a really fine distinction. We need to make that when we have more time. Randy Kelton, Rule of Law Radio, we are out of time. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back next Thursday at 8 o'clock, and then Friday at 8 o'clock, 8 to 12. Thank you all for listening.